Hello and welcome to Mandyland. I'm Mandy, your host, and we have got such a good one for you today. I am so excited about this one, and I'm excited that you're here. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. And we are going to just dive right in. I am going to tell you that I met this amazing, beautiful queen the other night, accidentally, yeah, right. Um, the
Right.
other night on a live, like really late at night, one of my really, really good, awesome friends had a live going, and we just met, and she popped up in, and I mean, the minute she started talking, I felt the vibe with her, and I was like, I reached out and said, "Hey, would you do a podcast with me?" But wait till you hear her story. But first, I want you to tell us all about you, Billie. And I'm so thankful that you're here. I love it. Thank you for being.
And yes, hey, Mandy, thank you so much for having me. Like you said, we met very late, 3 o'clock in the morning, I think late. That is very late for me. I'm never on social media that late, but there are no accidents, right? We know there's no accidents. So I'm so honored. And I was super excited to get that invite from you. So thank you. So yeah, a little bit about me. My name is Billie. I live in North Carolina currently. I've been here just over 20 years. I actually grew up in Missouri, in the Ozarks to be exact. I always get asked that question because of the show, right? So people always want to know that. So I grew up there. I am the mother of three children. Two of those children are here living. I'll share a little bit more about my baby in a moment. I am, again, a mother, a mentor. I've worked for the same company for almost 25 years, so over half of my life. I am an aspiring author. I am a practitioner with QHHT, so that is a past life regressionist. I am a healer and intuitive. And I have had the most incredible almost 4 years of my entire life. The past 4 years, I have learned so much and I've gained so much peace. I grew up in the church. I went to Bible college. I did all of those things, and nothing changed me and empowered me and gave me so much peace as really truly understanding who we are and why we're here. After experiencing the loss of my 2-year-old daughter almost 4 years ago, to be exact, her accident was August the 13th, 2022, which also happens to be my son's birthday. He was turning 3 on the same day of her accident that took place in my home. Almost immediately after that happened, I just threw myself into everything that I could think of to understand what my daughter had gone through. And I was very drawn to hearing near death experiences and understanding what people went through, kind of the evolution of their soul, you could say, what she experienced. And something that stuck with me in almost every single person's story that I heard was that no matter the life they had lived, no matter the choices they had made or who they were, what they believed, ultimately they ended up in a place of light and love. And that was very different from what I was taught growing up. It was very different than the trauma that I was holding on to as a child who grew up in the church, fearing hell, fearing that the rapture would one day happen and I would miss it because I hadn't said my daily sinner's prayer. And that gave me so much power and just made me want to learn more. So then I started really researching different light workers, mediums. I started, dabbling in different things, but overall, I found that the practitioner, role, the QHHT Dolores Cannon program, just really aligned with me the most. And I have had some really incredible experiences, having the opportunity to be that guide for, some friends, some clients, some people I knew, and some I didn't know very well. But ultimately, it has gotten to me where I am today, which is still learning, still curious, but still living in a space of everything that we do is rooted in love, and having peace in knowing that there are no accidents. Even the hardest things, like the loss of my child, has awakened me. That provoked my spiritual awakening, right? I love hearing people's stories about that, but that's what did it for me.
Wow. I am so blown away. And you had mentioned that the other night, about your baby. And what got me the most about this is that, well, first of all, it's hard to know like what to say, except, a lot of people say I'm sorry and all this stuff, but we
Mm,
we are, and I think that when people do that, they just mean, it's from their heart space. They're care, it's a care, it's a love, it's an honor, it's a, you know I wish that you hadn't, hurt so much. You know what I mean? And people say that a lot, when we lose, and I sometimes don't know what to say, but when you were talking the other night, I mean, and you said that, and there were several people in the room, and I felt the energy go, oh, because this is one of the heaviest, things that somebody can walk through. And to hear what you had to say, because I'm gonna tell you a little bit about one of the things I've been wanting to talk about in this podcast is, well, in my book, Fertile Darkness, which I should have grabbed it because I normally just show it, but in my book, I talk about being raped, and I talk about three times, which when I think of rape, um, I will have to put a trigger warning in this whole thing because a lot of people have gone through this stuff and it's very serious. But the three times, the three instances when I thought of rape, I thought of violence. And yes, there is that, of course, but mine was not violent. Mine was more manipulative. And mine, whenever that happened with me, and then one of them was like the date rape. So I got something was put in my drink. And so I think I had one beer, or half a beer or something like that. It was really crazy. And then I blacked out and didn't remember anything. So, like, those things happen. And so with my traumatic stories that I talk about in my book, I one of the things I've talked about is, and it's hard, it's hard for me to say this, but at the same time I do mean it, like what you were talking about is, I'm thankful, even though that should never happen to anyone. Okay, well, I'm just going to put that out there. That should never, ever, 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 ever happen. And while we do our healing work, like Billie, for instance, is a an energy healer, intuitive. I am too. And this is the reason why we do this work, is because we don't want to keep creating these things out into the world, right? And so, but that happening to me, I'm actually thankful because I look at it as it happening, it's been an awakening for me. Because me walking through that has allowed me to be able to love on, understand, and know how to help other women
mm,
who've gone through that. So if I
yeah.
hadn't had that happen to me and gone through the last 20 years of my own healing work, then I wouldn't be able to do what I love, which is love on people and help them heal so that they're not carrying around
Yeah.
this pain in their bodies, right? So whenever I have said that, I've said out loud, I'm so thankful for my life. I'm thankful for every single thing, and whenever you said that the other night and you said this was an awakening for me, and that I've heard you say this is the happiest that I've ever been, and this is going to blow people's minds. This is the reason why I've talked about this, and I know, I'm sure it blows people's mind. What? You're happy that this happened? there's a whole thing there, because we this was awakening for me and awakening for you, not only that, but to hear you being in contact with your daughter. And that is one of the things, like my mom passing three years ago. One of those things is me and her had a very rocky, weird. She was very religious. I got out of religion, like you. I got out of all of that, out of the, Christian, like all the fear and all the manipulation and control and all the things. I got out of all of that. And so mom and I, it was it was rough, for her and me. But we loved each other. We loved each other deeply. But after she's passed, that's when her and I begin our healing. It is the craziest
Yeah.
thing. And I want to dive into that later. But I would love to hear your story. I would love to hear like it's oh my God. I just want to say thank you for doing your work, healing your work. And just this is not easy stuff, and it's incredibly intense. And I wanted to tell you that my mom, the same thing that I knew when she passed. And yes, the anger came and the rage and the hurt and the pain and the grief and all of that stuff that I have felt. But she's told me, on this side of things, I had to go when I did. I had to go when I did because I needed to be your right hand man. I needed to support you 100% on what you were supposed to do in this world. And I had to be on this side of it, not the other side of it. And
Mm.
I know you feel that one because, okay, I'm going to be quiet. I really want to jump in and listen to your story and how this
Mm.
happened with your baby and all the things that you've gotten from it.
Yeah. No. Oh my gosh. First, let me say the whole time you were talking about what your mom has shown you since she has left this timeline with you, my body went into, I call them my truth bumps. It's just like a vibration. It's like my whole body will just, you can feel like like your hair raising, raising up. Like that's what it felt. So that's one of my indicators for myself when I'm speaking to someone and what they're telling me is resonating. It's real. It's like, yes, let them know that that is true. Right. So that's what my whole body did. So um, as you're talking, I write down a couple notes just because I kind of want to come back to a couple things. That's how I keep myself on track here because I get really excited and I want to go 100 different directions, right? So, one of the first things that you talked about, Mandy, was what people say to you, like, and just you mentioned some of the trauma that you've been through. Thank you so much for sharing that. I can't imagine. Like, I personally haven't experienced. I have had, friends or family, right? And there's, it is, something is taken from you, right? It's like one of the worst betrayals that I can ever imagine someone going through. And somewhere that I think we can relate in the loss of my daughter and what you experienced is people would say things to you like, you're one of God's strongest soldiers. He put you through that because he knew that you could handle it, right?
Mm.
I don't know if anybody's ever said that to you, but that
Yeah.
is certainly one of the things that I would get. And what does that even mean, right? No, I'm not. God did not put me through that because I am one of his strongest soldiers. And Mandy didn't have to go through that because Mandy is one of God's strongest soldiers. No, it doesn't work like that, right? So
Exactly.
what people would say to me is, God needed her more. God needed Marley more than we needed her here, right? Or people don't know what to see. You're right, they don't. And so I really, in the beginning, struggled with my reaction to what people would say, and then I realized they don't. I'm not going to take it personal because they don't know, what to say. So I just wanted to kind of connect that for us because in any trauma, people always want to put it back on, what the sky daddy is needs us to go through to learn our lessons, right? So I also wrote down, you talked about doing this work to help others. And what came to mind is being what you needed people to be for you. we're now able, because we're healing and we're learning, we're able to be for others what we needed. We talked a little bit about, my kids, and we haven't got to talk enough about yours yet, but being able to be a different and a better parent and a better teacher for them, right? So I'll start there with my story. And we can get into, the accident and how everything happened, and I'm comfortable with doing that.
I want to
It's
make
not a
sure we
story
get.
that,
Okay.
yeah,
Want to
not a
make
story
sure.
that, definitely. It's not a story that I share often, but it is one that has so many connections to just how it happened and how I got there. So, I had my daughter. She's almost 15. Her father and I divorced. Few years later, 3 or 4 years later, I met my second husband. Things happened very quickly. And I believe, when things are supposed to happen, you're on the right path. They happen naturally, they happen organically. I don't believe anymore in this blood, sweat, tears. If you don't have to work hard and rake yourself over the coals for it, then it's not worth it and it's not right. I don't believe that. I believe what is supposed to happen on your journey happens. So, we did all the things. We got the house, we did the kids back to back. My son is about to turn 7, and 15 months after I had him, I had my baby. I had Marley. Um, it was a surprise, right? It wasn't something that I was trying not to let happen, but it was a surprise nonetheless. And there was just something always very different about Marley. She was, I mean, all of my children are beautiful. We all think that our children are beautiful, but there was just something very different about her. My other two would be going at it like kids all do, being kids. And she would just be the peaceful one in the corner with her big blue eyes, just looking around the room and soaking it all up. She had a tiny little petite frame, and for a long time, we didn't think that, Marley was going to speak. I mean, Marley was, over a year old, and we hadn't really heard Marley say much. She was a very quiet little gal, until one day we were all in a room and someone sneezed, and she said, "Bless you." And we all got very bright eyed, like, oh my gosh, like we were just amazed because, she wasn't a talking gal. But she I mean, she just brought us so much joy. There was always a very interesting connection that I felt like she had to my father's mother, who passed away when I was 13. And I mean, name, the frame, the little sassiness, just like her lips, her eyes. I even had a collage that I created when she was probably 8 months old of her and some old pictures of my grandma. And I would share it around my family, like, oh my gosh, can you believe how much she looks like Grandma Mary? Um, and anyway, that was a very important person in my life. My grandma Mary was, who was with me when I was experiencing some things as, a young preteen. So she was special to me. Um, so anyway, Marley and my son Malachi and I were all at home on a Saturday afternoon, August 13th, 2022, that just so happened to be Malachi's third birthday. And on that day, I have pictures and videos that morning of, the kids laying in bed together, um, and they were, talking about Malachi's party that was upcoming, and they were just loving each other and holding each other. I mean, I get asked all the time if they were twins because they really did look alike. Um, and we were FaceTiming their sister and other people. We were getting calls all morning. It was just the three of us at home, and we were FaceTiming their sister, and um, Malachi was saying something funny. Instead of saying, "How old are you?" Because people always say, "How old are you today?" He was saying 13 instead of 3. So we thought that was so funny every time we would get on the phone with somebody and we were talking to his sister. And I said, ask him. And me and Malachi and Marley were sitting on the couch. Ask him how old he is. And she asked him, he said 13. And out of the corner of my eye, I see Marley walk up these little stairs that we have and go over to the dining room area, which was not abnormal, but she was very much attached to me. No matter where we would be, anywhere in the house or anywhere, she was attached to my side. So I see her out of the corner of my eye walking up the stairs, and within seconds, I hear this very large mirror that we have in our home that's on a wooden stand that's been there, her whole life, my son's whole life, um, come crashing down. And I immediately think to myself, well, I don't hear a cry. I don't hear the baby crying. I don't hear anything. So I rush over and I lift the mirror, and she is under the mirror. She's face down on the floor. And, my son is, why? What happened? What's going on? He's getting really upset. And I had been on FaceTime with my daughter, and I had thrown my phone. And I went to look for my phone to call 911. And at this time, she had started to breathe. And, she was very just, her face, everything was just very already swelling, just, as she had fallen and everything had hit, from the back on the mirror. So I'm on the phone with the 911 operator, and she's talking me through some things, and she's asking me if she's breathing. And I said, well, yeah, she just, I'm holding her in my arms, and she's breathing, and yes, she's breathing. And um, it took almost 20 minutes for the ambulance to get to my house. And this was enough time for people in my neighborhood to kind of come. I could see a few people in the street when when I had finally made my way outside. And finally, the EMT walks in my door, and he looks at my daughter, and he says something along the lines of, oh, it wasn't the word tragic. It was more like his shock was like, okay, this wasn't entered in as a call. That was this. His expectation was that the baby had just had, you know, uh, the mirror, but the baby was breathing, everything. He was just in shock. So, um, this is enough time for their father to get here, and he is, just in panic mode. And they're taking her to, outside, and I'm like in my nightgown, and I'm like outside, just like not just I can't even think. Like everything is just swirling around me. And I have Malachi, and I tell their father, like, you have to go in the ambulance with them. I gotta, I can't, like, you have to go with them. And so in the meantime, somehow I lock myself out of the house, and the ambulance goes, and they go. And so they end up going halfway to the hospital, and they have to airlift her, to the children's hospital. And my brother gets to the house, and he, is driving me there. We get to the hospital, and, they have her on the vent. No, 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 not yet. Hold on. We get to the hospital, and it takes a while for us to be able to see her. And I'm just like, I need to get to her. I need to get to her. And, um, finally we get to see her, and she's breathing. Okay, they have her on a vent. She's breathing on her own and the vent. I could tell that. And they take her back to do a scan. And when she comes back, she's not breathing on her own anymore. I couldn't see her lungs, you know? So it got wild, right? So we were in the hospital for 3 days, and, family, I mean, just an overwhelming outpour of love and support, and just so many people were just, I mean, it was incredible. It was during, kind of the end of COVID, so things were still a little bit strange in the hospital with everyone, but overall we could kind of, move as we needed to. But she was shocking people in the hospital because my brother walked in the room and said her name, and she just like immediately like threw her arms in the air, like she had recognized his voice, and like even my voice. Like when I would lay next to her, she would squeeze my hand, and the doctor would come in the room, and she would take her leg and like hit his body with her leg. And first they tried to tell us that it was seizures, right? Because she had brain damage. Like she, they were telling us, like immediately with some of the scans, like she had brain damage and that, just the worst case scenarios, right? Immediately. It was very, very quick. They were giving us the worst case scenarios. And they couldn't understand, though, why, those things were happening with her body movement. And so, it really kind of kept hope for us, that she was still kind of doing some things that they weren't expecting for her to be able to do. So I started to try to connect with her telepathically. And I would tell her things like, and this wasn't something that was anything I had ever done before. I never, had even thought about this, but it was something that, her father had said a few times that he felt like he could communicate with her through telepathy. So I would tell her, like, hey, squeeze my hand, 3 times if you if I have to let you go, if I have to let you go, like, you know, and she did that. And so after countless tests and experts and just, seeing horrific things like stuff coming out of her ears, like her brain damage, or she was so swollen. Um, we made the decision to take her off the vent 3 days later, so on the 16th. So the day that was going to happen, um, that night before, I was in the hospital room with my children's father, my two brothers, and my stepmom, and we were all laying there. I was laying in bed with Marley, and everybody else was on the floors and on the couches, just anywhere they could find space. And all of the lights in our room started to flash off and on and off and on and off and on. And the nurses would come into the room and they're like looking around, like, what is that? What is going on? And they would go into the hallway and they would look for other, like, was it happening anywhere else in the hospital, right? And it wasn't. It was only happening in our room. And again, I never used to think about, supernatural things or spirits, and those things were all new age or witchcraft or whatever. That's what I was brought up to think, right? But something in me just immediately knew that that was something more than what we thought it was, right? So that day, 2 men came into our room and they um, basically were there to ask us if they could have her organs. And it felt like the most uncomfortable sales transaction, like slimy scheme I had ever, experienced. Um, and, I had differing opinions about it. Her father grew up, he's Haitian and grew up in a Haitian culture. And that was something that they were not okay with. And so I was okay with, saying no to that. But it was, I mean, just the pain of losing, our child and then having to have these men sit down to this uncomfortable sales transaction and tell us all the reasons, why we would be making the wrong decision if we didn't offer up all of her organs. It was wild. Um, so we said no, and then that night, we took the vent out and, her body just, shut down immediately as, they told us that it would. And everyone was there and then everyone left and it was just her father and I there and just, bathing her. And, the hardest thing was leaving that hospital without her. Like that made it very real. But as I left, I asked her because I had known, like, I lost my mother at a very young age, and my whole entire life, I would have ladybugs that would just pop up on me anywhere I was. I could be in the basement of a hotel, I could be at the swimming pool, I could be in the winter in the mountains, and like ladybugs would find me. And I didn't know why till several years later. That's another story. But I asked Marley to come to me in the same way that my mother did through ladybugs. So that night, we came home. I Grief is a roller coaster. Grief is wild. And my first initial thing when I got home was I started ripping pictures off the wall and screaming, and it was anger. It was anger that hit me because I was at a time in my life where I'm in my late 30s at the time. I had gained so much weight in between my back-to-back pregnancies. I didn't like the way I looked, so I wasn't taking pictures of myself. And so I didn't have new pictures on my wall. I didn't have pictures of her. I had pictures of everyone else, but none of her and I. So I thought, well, why would she want to be here anyway? I don't even have pictures of her. So I'm ripping them down, ripping them down. And then I look at my teenage daughter and she's in pain. And so I had to quickly get out of that, get into mom mode, take care of her. And we stepped out onto the back patio so she could have a release. She was feeling a lot of guilt about not being at the hospital, not being able to see her, her little sister in that situation. And so we're talking and I'm helping her through it. And she said, Mommy, turn around. And I turned around and there were 10 ladybugs on the back door of my house. And so we called all of our family out. And it was just like the most amazing, incredible thing you could, ever see in that moment. Um, but you mentioned earlier about people not, understanding and not when someone says like I'm the happiest I've ever been, even after losing a child, that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. That doesn't mean you don't go through, pain when you talk about it or relive it. It just means that you've accepted what you've experienced and you find purpose in that pain. You find you find a way to take what you experience and love even more. And people judge grief all of the time. Within a short amount of time, I had a family member say to me, like, I'm so happy that you were able to move on from that so quickly. Just the meanest things, people have said. And there's a woman on TikTok who wrote about her loss of her 2-year-old daughter and how she wrote a book where she channeled her daughter and she's just awesome, but she talked about this and then I started to feel it myself. But there's so many different directions we could go with this conversation. We could go down the path of soul families and contracts and how I feel like I chose that experience. I chose to experience that with my daughter. And I think that it was probably like one of those agreements you make with your childhood friend where you're like, okay, by the time we're
Before
35, if we haven't gotten married, let's marry each other. What? Yeah. Oh,
before you
before.
even
Yeah.
get
So
here,
I think
you know,
that Marley,
before you, isn't that what you mean?
before,
Before you even get to Earth, you
that's what I'm,
make this agreement. Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, we
We
did that. I
we have
believe
about
that.
we have about 4 minutes left, but we're gonna
I
we
got
we're gonna cut this and we're gonna go right into another one because we're not done.
okay. Okay.
And I want you,
Well, it took a lot of time there.
no, oh my goodness. I first of all honor you. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable and talking about this. And I am a firm believer that the more that we share our experiences, the more that there's another part of us that gets healed. I do. It's another layer, and another layer because, like you said, grief.
Oh, for
Oh,
sure.
it's a roller, like you said, it's a roller coaster. It's up and down and it hits you when it does. And especially talking about it, like I wanted to hear about how amazing
Yeah.
this beautiful girl is. And I mean, I just got a full beautiful picture of her. I could just like, I don't know. I just feel like she's like, her arms are wide open right now, just like hugging you. Like I just feel that, just with you talking and breathe, like just, oh my goodness. Like, the love that but the just honoring you in that experience, that is gut wrenching. And like you said, and
Yeah.
that's the reason why I wanted you to talk about it because there's so many other people that like you said, I'm sure you've met a lot of people too that have experienced this stuff. But
Yeah.
your healing process, but I just, my heart, I was with you every second you were talking. And honestly, it's my arms too, that reached through this thing and just like held you in that moment, like because that's my heart, Um,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. Like you said, you can't imagine what I walked through. I can't even begin to imagine. Um, but I am honored that you would even share this experience and everything you learned from it. And we're going to take just a small break and we're going to come right back into the next one. Give me about 5 minutes to upload this one. And then we're going to go right back in and I want you to process and where would you like to take it from here? Because this is a really powerful story. And
Okay.
you are just, uh, I'm just honored that thank you so much for just being with
Um,
me and sharing that with
thank you. Thank you for
me.
allowing me to.
It's
Yes.
sacred, sacred space. You and your daughter's sacred. She's sacred, you
She's
know.
amazing. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you. I
um,
will wait for you.
all right. And I'll get right back in touch with you and we're not done. We're just
Thank you.
getting started.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Bye.
Bye.